Welcome to Real Reefing TV, where I discuss my real experiences, give you guys real knowledge that you can apply to your reef. Today we're going to deep dive into the fish selection process, 3 things you need to know when you're selecting your next edition to give it the best chance for success. And at the end I'm going to give you a bonus tip that after you've selected your fish, that you absolutely cannot leave the fish store without doing first. First thing when you are thinking about your next addition to your tank, you need to actually think about your tank. Think about what you already have in it. Do you have corals? Do you have fish? Do you have shrimp? What do you already have in your tank so that you can make the best decision on what to add to it? Come up with a few options, write them down in a list on what kind of fish you think would go best with what you already have, and then do your research on those fish. So those 3 basic principles of fish selection are: number 1, compatibility; number 2, size; number 3, health. Right? I know I went over this a couple of weeks ago in my last video where I went out and bought this clownfish. Where'd he go? Oh, here he is, coming in for the win. Big guy. All right. So I know I talked about these 3 basic principles when I was going out and selecting that fish, but I wanted to deep dive into them. What does it actually mean to look for the health of the fish? How do you actually do that? What does it mean that you need to keep in mind the size of the fish that you're buying? You know, is it a big fish? Is it a small fish? Is there a rule of thumb how big of a fish I should buy? So those types of things. And then compatibility, right? I mean, sure, if I could throw in another fish in here, but is it really going to be compatible? And how do I know if it's compatible? So I wanted to go over those 3 things with you. So the first thing is compatibility. When we're looking at the next fish that we're going to add to our system, we need to make sure that it's going to jive with everything that we have going on in the tank. So you need to think about what's already in your tank. If you have tangs, you need to make sure that if it's, is it a similar body style to a tang that you already have? If you have shrimp in the tank or clams, you want to be careful of those fish that like to nip at the mantle on clams or eat shrimp. A couple of examples for you are wrasses. A lot of wrasses will like to eat invertebrates like shrimp and clams, things like that. Triggerfish are notorious for eating shrimp. So you probably want to stay away from triggerfish if you're doing that. A lot of triggerfish are also not reef safe, and they can slam things around, like move your rock work, and they can eat your corals too. So again, be careful with the fish that you're buying. Make sure that they're compatible with the inhabitants that you already have in your tank. It's not all about the fish. If you have a reef tank, you've got to make sure that they're also compatible with the corals and the invertebrates that you have in your system. So the next thing is size. Is there a good rule of thumb on how much fish I should have in my tank? No. Is there a good rule of thumb on the size of the fish that I should buy relative to, its own size? Yeah, absolutely. Now, you also have to have some common sense, right? Don't buy a tang that's, a little baby tang that's 1 inch. I've done it. It's a bad experience. It almost always will die. Just reason being is, number 1, it needs a lot more attention. It needs fed a lot more, and then also you're adding it to a system that's already going. It's gonna get picked on and probably killed. So don't do that to yourself. Don't do that to the fish. Stick with probably somewhere around a medium-sized fish and above. That way you can make sure that you're staying relative to the size of the fish. A good way to figure out if it's a medium-sized fish for its own species is to go on, I just throw it in a Google search, the fish's name, and usually one of the first ones that comes up is liveaquaria.com, and so I'll just click on that link, read the bio about the fish so that you can learn a little bit more about it. And they even have a compatibility chart. They have an aggression chart. so that you can make sure that, number one, you're buying a fish that is you have enough room for. It has that on there too, that you're buying a fish that has the right temperament and aggressiveness towards all the other fish in your tank. So keep that in mind with compatibility and size. But they'll also tell you down at the bottom if it's a small, medium, or extra large, and how big that that range is for a medium-sized fish of that particular species. So use that as a good rule of thumb and gauge. Now I know a lot of us, when we're in the fish store and we're looking around on, at all the fish, we're hobbyists. This is what we love to do. We just like to go look around, and then we see something that catches our eye and we want to buy it. Do a little bit of research first. Throw it in a Google search. Go to Live Aquaria or any other fish retailer. They'll give you a little bit of information about the fish so that you're a little bit more educated when buying it. You can at the very least make sure that it has some compatibility with the other tank inhabitants that you have, that it's not going to eat up your favorite chalice or SPS. And then finally, that it's got, it's not super aggressive and gonna, bully all of your other fish. So size has a lot to do with it, not only for the health of the fish, because I know I'm bleeding them together because they are, but size has to do with how they react to the other fish and how the other fish react to it. I'll give you an example. If you have, and let's use tangs because they're most widely used in our hobby. If you have 4 or 5 tangs and you want to add another one, best off to go with something that's of a similar size or larger. Because when they're trying to find their territories and they're trying to divvy it out once the new addition is put in there, a smaller fish isn't going to be able to hold its own. So you need a larger fish that's going to be able to hold its own, find its own territory, and stand its ground. And make sure that fish isn't too big for your overall tank. I have a 300-gallon 6-foot tank, so I can put pretty big fish in here, but I still have to be cognizant. I can't buy, a foot-long fish. That probably wouldn't be a good idea. He doesn't have much room to swim around. But if I had a 12-foot-long tank, he'd probably be fine. So just, use some common sense when you're going to buy your next fish, and make sure that it's not too big for your tank, but not too small that it's going to get lost or die. So a few things on the smaller fish. Smaller fish tend to be a little bit more timid. They usually will have a weaker immune system, and they can get stressed out a lot more easily. So remember to check some type of resource and make sure that you're buying a medium-sized fish relative to the fish that you're looking to buy. And finally, health, right? I mean, you can't just rely on compatibility and size alone. Those are very important things, and those are the first 2 things that you have to do when selecting your fish. So you've selected the type of fish that you're gonna buy, you're making sure that you're in a decent size range, but then you finally have to make sure that it's a healthy fish before you take it home with you. So how do we do that? What do we look for? And that's the biggest thing. We're gonna look for those signs in that fish. Now it's not foolproof, these 4 things that I'm gonna tell you to look for, but it will decrease your chances of taking home a sick fish with you. So the first thing that I want you to look for is the fins. I want you to take a look and make sure that the fins aren't tattered. Look for the fins to see if they have any spots on them or specks on them. Make sure that they're, like they should look. So you want to look at the pectoral fins, the I don't know, what's the fin at the back, and the fin on the top. I don't know. Look at all the fins and just make sure that they're healthy looking. Then you want to look at the body. This is the second thing. You want to look at the body and make sure that it doesn't have any lesions on it. You want to make sure it doesn't have any cuts on it, or specks or speckles or dust or pepper. Seriously, like things that look like pepper, like it's been rolled in confectioner sugar, probably not a good sign. Or anything sloughing off of it is not a good sign either. Probably want to stay away from those and just walk away. The next thing you want to look for is the eyes. You want to make sure that it doesn't look like it has like cataracts or something. Make sure that it's nice and it can, just see clearly out of his eyes, and that they're not cloudy. And then finally, you want to look for the way that it's swimming. Is it swimming upside down or vertically? Is it banging up against things, the rock work or the glass? Is it out swimming? So if it's doing any of those things, bad. If it's out just swimming around, being social in the front of the glass, like, hey, look at me, take me home with you, that's a pretty good sign. Also, maybe fate, I don't know. And then I mentioned to you guys that there was one huge tip that I wanted to give you, a bonus tip, that before you leave the fish store with your new fish, that you need to make sure that you do. You need to make sure that they feed the fish. So after you've done all of those other things, after you make sure that the fish is compatible, that it's a good size, and you've looked right at it, and you made sure that it's a healthy fish, have them feed the fish. So this is like your last line of defense. Because you can do any of those, all of those other things, and if it's not eating, if it's not aggressively going after food, it's maybe developing something. So loss of appetite is a precursor to a lot of fish diseases and parasites. So make sure that you have them feed the fish before you leave. And if it's eating great, perfect, then go ahead and have them bag it up for you, take it on up to the front counter, and take it home with you. Quarantine it for a couple of weeks just to make sure, and then get it on into your main display so that you can enjoy that new fish, so that your tank mates can enjoy the new fish, your new fish can enjoy your reef, and everybody's happy. Hey, listen guys, I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. I'd love it if you could maybe comment below and tell me some of the things that you like to look for when you're looking for your next fish. And then finally, if you haven't already done it, subscribe so that you can get all of the new videos sent right to you. Thanks a lot and have a good one.